Thank you for this very nice and interesting talk. I recommend you don't show this last picture everywhere, because there are places where you could be in trouble by showing something like that in public now. So let's start with the discussion. Questions, comments? Wow. So may I start? There is, well, I started now. Brigitte will come after. The question is that I found puzzling about the oldest artifacts in Java is that we have hominins under the Grants Bank. To date, do we have any artifacts? Or
very few, in fact. The oldest artifactual evidence is, we have 3 examples. One is very, very tiny. It was the discovery by Kildo Choi of cut marks, again. Probably made by a shell tool on a bone. A second one is a couple of lithic artifacts we discovered north of Sangiran, which are about 1 million years old. And the most sound one are the discoveries of Sangiran flakes by Widianto, just below the Grants Bank. Alors, those flakes are likely to have been transported. So this is, again, the question of the places that were inhabited. Pujangan layers, we didn't speak about Pujangan layers, but they are mostly clayey, as everyone knows. And if you do not have stone, you do not have artifacts. What is amazing in Sangiran, but it's totally normal, is whenever you find a layer with stones, you will find artifacts. But the question of behavior of the earliest inhabitants is still a big question mark.
Thanks, very clear. Brigitte.
Merci, Jean-Jacques. I was very interested in your concept of island in island. Can you comment a little bit more about that? Because I think it's very important for all this area in the world.
I'm not a biogeographer, I'm sorry. Though, the question is that the precise geological history of Java Island is not settled as yet. So first, it is absolutely possible. It is certain 2 million years ago, but it is absolutely possible that before the lower to middle Pleistocene boundary, you had several islands. So the first point is, do you consider Java Island as an object, means you have the present view, or do you consider Java Island as an area in an archipelago? In such a case, of course, you would have had during the Pleistocene, and most probably until 0.5 million years, several islands in the island. The second point is the question of different niche within an island. And this exists also. But once again, I'm not a biogeographer. But when John DeVos is amazed, that question of stegodon in southern Java is important. It was even noticed by Teilhard de Chardin when he paid a visit to von Königswald in the mid-1930s, and he wrote a letter to Abbe Breuil telling von Königswald is a nice boy, very intelligent, very clever, and he found this and that in southern Java. The only thing is that he must find fossils that allow to make the link with Eastern Java and Sangiran, which is something that has not been done as yet. So I do not rely on absence. I suppose paleontologists like you could be angry if I do, but this is a fact. Another fact is, like in Bumiayu, you collect fossils in Sangiran for more than 100 years, and you never found a single trace of Gigantopithecus in Sangiran.
Merci.
More questions? Professor Donner.
On one of your slides, you showed Flores connected to its neighbouring islands. With the outlying islands east of Bali, how many of those do you think have always been islands and not joined to their neighbours?
How many?
Of those islands have always been islands like Flores? In other words, was there a corridor?
Depuis quand?
No, the corridor doesn't exist because east of Bali you have the Wallace Line. So even, alors, Palawan, the Palawan question between Borneo and Palawan can be discussed, but the way to Flores includes a sea strait. That's for sure. No problem.
More comments? So, as we have a little bit of time, I'm going to take a chance to tell you a story. No, we ask many questions about sea crossing during the Pleistocene and how hominins could get to islands like Flores or Luzon this week. And I do diving, and I discussed this issue with divers diving in the area already. And I was told the story of two divers, one of them with whom I personally spoke, were doing what we call drift diving, which means you are dropped from a boat and you let the stream take you, you drift along a reef, for example, and the boat pick you up 1 mile or 2 further away. It has to be very well organized because, of course, there is a chance that the boat does not find you. And these two guys had this experience offshore Lombok. And they got lost. And they spent a whole night between Lombok and Bali. Must have been a rather interesting night. And in 24 hours, they drifted from Lombok to Bali, which is 30 plus kilometers, depending where you cross. And so I think this idea that animals like stegodon or even a hominin being on offshore for some reason accidentally could move from one island to another in this kind of environment is not completely inconceivable without having organized seafaring.
Yes, but 2 divers are not enough to create a population.
Yeah, but if it happens repeatedly, I mean, anyway, we have to find an explanation for these hominins occurring in these islands. And
this is very, very strange. For me, the discovery of Pongo in MIS 5 in Punung is a mystery also. Okay, it's absolutely normal to find Pongo in a rainforest. But you find the rainforest when the sea level was high. So how did Pongo reach the island? So you have to imagine a mosaic landscape with some rainforest during a low stand sea level. And then the rainforest is blossoming and Pongo is happy. But how did Pongo reach? That is a question. And for humans also.
On a tree.
No, but I don't know Asia and this part of Asia at all, but in Africa I've seen so many times big pieces of lands moving away in the mangroves and so on. And they are not tiny pieces of land. It can be much bigger than this audience, I mean, much bigger things. And okay, you can carry anything in this kind of mangroves.
Yes, but you need a population anyway.
Well, but I think you have to think in terms of time. It's not maybe not one island. It's maybe thousands during many, many months. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's not one day I decide to look to this island. It's a process through time. And I think it's populations through time, or people through time, and animal through time.